I didn't really understand why I was doing it. Like, I wouldn't want to drink, and I wouldn't want to drink that much, and I certainly wouldn't want to drink to black out. I just wanted to drink to calm down and not feel like the way I was feeling.
I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck, and we are Gold Diggers. It's not what you're thinking.
And we dig the gold out of everyday life stories.
Like today's guest.
Hi, I'm Sharlene King, and I think my goal is to give others hope and build resilience through the experiences and challenges that I've been through.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So we're back for another great podcast. But before we get into our guest today, who's called Sharlene King, we're going to have a little question from Sam, our producer. Go for it, Sam.
All right. So if you could have lunch with anybody in the world right now, who would it be and why?
To be honest, I'd take anyone right now because I'm pretty hungry.
That's what I was going to say. Just give me lunch.
It is lunchtime.
It is. So if you hear a few rumbles, it's me.
It's lunchtime. Who would you choose, Ange? Besides me.
Well, you can't choose anyone that's like friends and family because, like, obviously our closest loved ones.
Yes.
You know. So I don't know. The person that came to mind is actually a bit of a surprise to me, and I thought Donald Trump.
Oh,
I'd probably have to wear my tin hat and dodge the bullets, but
I like that. I reckon I'd have
he
to
would
go.
be quite an interesting dinner guest, don't you reckon?
Yeah, actually, I know who I'd invite. So besides my family, who I just love having every meal with, I would choose Russell Brand.
Yeah, I would too.
He's just like, I'm so impressed
I
with
would
him
choose
at the
Russell.
moment.
Yeah, oh, you got that one. I didn't
got
think
it.
of him.
Russell
Yes.
Brand. He'd be so funny,
I come
but
to dinner?
so deep at the same time. You're coming, Russell's coming,
Donald Trump's
yeah,
coming.
Sam's coming.
Sam's coming.
We'll bring Donald. Yeah, but
I've
wouldn't that
been
be an
following
interesting
Russell Brand.
lunch?
Like, he's just like, yeah, I really love all that he's pushing out at the moment.
He's come a long way.
Yeah.
And just really standing his ground. But you might have seen his post where he was baptising a
Yes,
guy.
I have.
Yes. But he was in his tidy whities.
In his budgie smugglers. Tidy whities.
comments.
I read those too.
I'm just like, come on, guys.
And then he does a post the next day.
What's he doing? He's
Look.
actually baptising someone.
Yes.
I think let's focus on that, not on his tidy whities.
Exactly.
And then that next post.
Yeah, well, he said that. Come on.
And he
Who's
says,
looking at my tidy whities? We're baptising someone, for goodness sake.
he says, look, even though I've come into faith, I'm a Christian now, he says, I'm still a show off. He said, I didn't need to post that post, but I still put it up. He said, God made me a show off, so there you
I
go.
just like how real he is.
He is,
Like,
yeah.
he just says what we're all thinking, but too afraid to say, really.
No, it's really good. Yeah, so I would definitely invite Russell Brand to lunch.
And in that case, I'm coming to lunch.
Let's all come.
So let's go to today's guest. So today we welcome into the studio Sharlene King. So good to have you here.
Hello.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Right, here goes the first question. Sharlene, if you were to holiday, would you holiday in a tent, a houseboat, or a unit by the beach?
Probably a unit.
Yes. And why would that be?
I'm just ready for more of a luxurious holiday than I love camping, don't get me wrong, but I just kind of envision my next holiday being something
You
like,
need to be pampered a bit.
yeah, a little bit more
That sounds nice.
fancy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's what the goal
I wouldn't
is.
go on the houseboat because I get seasick. But
The idea of the houseboat does appeal to me.
yeah.
Because I love fishing and everything, but no, out of the three at the moment, it would definitely be a unit.
Yeah, I'd probably go that
I don't
way
think any
too.
of us would choose a tent, let's be honest.
No. Some people love it.
Yeah.
Which is great.
It's a good experience.
Yeah.
The last camping holiday I had with the kids was the first camping holiday we'd ever had. We hadn't really done a lot of camping.
Yeah.
And they were a little bit skeptical at first, but it ended up being one of the best holidays ever.
So, Sharlene, how many kids do you have?
I have 4 children.
Nice.
Yes.
And what ages are they?
My son is 20
Yep.
and I have a daughter that's 18 and I have twin girls that are 16.
Oh, wow. So they're coming through those teenage years,
They
moving
are.
into adulthood.
Yep.
Wow. Isn't that a big transition in itself?
It's huge. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know, a lot of people think, oh, it must be so much easier now that they're teenagers and they're growing
I
up.
always say
and-
this.
I try not to sound too knowing, but I think every stage is hard, in a sense, but also every stage has a lot of joy and, a lot of fun times. And I think...
You can say it sucks. When they're teenagers,
I think
it's
when
so
they're
hard.
little, it's hard physically because you have to do everything, to an extent. You have to do everything for them. You have to do all the cleaning up. And but they also tend to follow instruction a bit better, and they go to bed at a reasonable hour, and you get a little bit of rest. And then as they get older and, they develop personalities and attitudes and minds of their own.
It's so true, isn't it? Like every stage is so precious. I saw a beautiful post on Instagram the other day, and it was off a show, and they were saying when you have your first child, you have this little baby and you are just so in love with this baby. But with this baby comes all the nappy changes and all the things that go with having a baby. But before you realise that baby starts talking and crawling and walking, and you don't have that baby anymore, you now have a toddler, and then before you know it, that toddler's becoming a young child going to school, and then you realise I don't have a toddler or a baby anymore, I have this.
And then they start changing your nappies.
And it goes on until they're an adult, and you say, like, you look at them and you go, I don't have those little kids anymore. I have a big kid who's an adult.
But even in
now.
parenting, it changes, doesn't it, with each season that they go through.
Yeah.
So I think teenage season is pretty one of the hardest.
Yeah.
Couldn't imagine having 4. I only had 1.
Yeah.
And he was pretty easy, really. So if you've got 4...
It is fun, though, as they kind of get a sense of humour that you both relate to. And there's some good conversations and banter that can happen in those teenage years as well.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
Yeah. And you said you've got twins. Wow. How is that? 2 babies at once.
Yeah.
And as your third, basically.
Yeah.
So you've already got the 2 older ones, and then ta-da, here's twins.
Yeah.
How was that?
Well, there's a bit of a funny story with that some people are very welcoming of, and other people roll their eyes or don't believe it. But we lived in Sydney, and I was going to the zoo with my older 2 who were babies at the time, and I looked out to the universe and asked for a sign. Just feeling a bit flat, and I got to the zoo and there was double prams everywhere. So I told everybody I was having twins, and everyone's like, oh, congratulations. And I was like, oh no, I'm not pregnant, that's just going to happen. And then a few months later, pregnancy, and there they were. So initially it wasn't a shock. Like I've had a lot of those things throughout my life, and however, I think once you're in that, and I had 2 toddlers and 2 babies, it's a bit of a blur, to be honest, looking back. But
There's not a lot of sleep going on in
there
those
wasn't.
years,
There
is there?
really, I really suffered dreadfully from lack of sleep. Which led to some postnatal depression, and I think sleep was a big factor. Yeah.
And how did you manage going through postnatal depression with 4 little children under the age of 4, I think you said?
Yeah. It was really challenging. I did seek, I got help from a GP, and was put on some medication. And one of the really hard things for me was not being able to breastfeed after as long as I wanted to, because I breastfed my elder 2 for quite a while, and so there was a lot of that mother guilt, I think, associated with the postnatal depression.
Yeah.
But in time, I got to see that was the right decision for the family, and we started to get a lot more sleep, and people were a bit more settled. Which
A lot of women go through it, don't they? It is a common thing, and I think it's more widely spoken about now, which is good. It's not just one woman suffering by herself. It's many who can share that conversation. If we go back to your childhood, did you grow up in a family with lots of children?
I have 2 younger sisters.
Yeah. So you always
there's 3
wanted-
girls. Yeah.
Always
I guess I always had in my head I'd have 3.
Yeah.
My mum always said she wanted a boy and then 3 girls.
Yeah.
And so now we joke that I got what she wanted. But, I definitely always imagined having a family. And I think from a really young age, I was always that big cousin that, had all the kids hanging off me and loved playing with other little babies and kids, and always had an affinity with kids and always wanted to be a mum. I don't really remember dreaming about the wedding and the white picket fence, and I was always going to have a daughter called Grace as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like my whole life that's kind of been what's really stood out for me more than anything else, wanting to be a mum.
Yeah, right. And your memories of being a teenager now that you have teenagers, what were your teenage years like?
I was a relatively good girl. Like, I was really focused on my studies and getting good grades, and I put a lot of pressure on myself to be really the best at a lot of things that I did. And if I wasn't the best or one of the best, I probably wasn't that interested in it. So my teenage years, I was focused on doing really well at school.
So you're a high achiever.
Yeah.
Yeah. And did you have good support during those years? So when you left high school, did you get married?
No, I left high school, and although I got a good grade, I didn't quite get the grade of what I wanted to do at the time at university. So I ended up getting a job in an investment bank in Sydney, and worked there for a couple of years. And I was also working in a restaurant and a bakery, so saving lots of money, because my other goal was to go and live overseas and work overseas and travel. So.
And you got to do that, did you?
Yeah, when I was 22, I got on a plane for London and off I went.
Oh, nice.
How long did you live in London for?
6 years all up, I think. Or I came back when I was 28. Yeah, but I had come back for just a shorter period of time in the middle when my middle
You love
sister
England?
got married. I love it. Yes,
Yeah.
I love London, and I was fortunate where I was working. I got a job at the same investment bank that I was working in Sydney.
Yeah.
So I earned really good money. So I had the opportunity to travel in style as well as throw on a backpack. But and I flat shared with English women. So I had the not so Aussie experience, I suppose, like a lot of, backpackers go over.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you got married? Did you
No.
say? You didn't get
No.
married. So where was the father of your children?
So when I returned from the UK, I met someone fairly quickly, and got pregnant with my son fairly quickly.
So are they're all from the same father?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where did you meet him?
In Sydney
Okay.
on a blind date.
Oh, right. Nice.
Oh, is it one of these? We'll meet in a cafe. I've got a book on the side with a rose in there, or something like that. Or like, how did you arrange this blind date?
A friend of mine, a girlfriend of mine, who surfed, said that she had a friend that surfed, and he was looking to meet a nice girl, and she set us up, and we just went to a pub in Manly and just agreed to meet in a certain location, and she'd sort of explained what he looked like. So
you hit it off pretty fast, and he became the father of your children. And did he hang around during their growing up years?
we separated when the twins were 4, quite early on in the relationship. In hindsight now, I would recognise as DB, but at the time I hadn't had any experience with domestic violence whatsoever. My parents are still married, and, I had a pretty regular childhood. My dad worked really hard. My mum stayed at home with us for years, and so I kind of grew up with this idea that would be, how my life would be, that I would be at home with the kids and the husband would be off working, and it just didn't really work out that way and I guess because I fell pregnant with my son quite quickly, I just kept thinking that it would get better and, that things would change. And when I was pregnant with my son, some things happened that were quite scary, that I ended up moving back home with my mum and dad, and then came the guilt and the remorse and the apologies, and everything will be different. And I just didn't recognise the cycle of violence. I'd just never seen it in action. So I held on to the apologies and came back, and it really just continued that way for a number of years. During that time, I'd always been quite a big drinker, but could pull it up and, had really great jobs and travelled and everything. And then after I'd had the twins and the postnatal depression, and once I'd finished breastfeeding them, I started drinking again and just using it as a, coping and as an escape. And then I would stop drinking and want to get sober. And when I would get strong, then I would talk about leaving, and then the alcohol would be reintroduced to the house. And it became this really vicious cycle of me trying to get sober, me drinking again. When I was drinking, he would call ambulances, police, child safety. There was hundreds and hundreds of reports to child safety. So child safety ended up becoming involved in the situation, and they would just come and talk to us, and the police would come, and I would just hang my head in shame. What can I, I drank. Yes, there's hospital records to prove it, and I just felt really trapped. We were moved to the mid-north coast. That's where all of his family are.
What happened to you when you were drinking? What behavioural things would change in you?
I'm an alcoholic. I'm in recovery now and have been for a number of years, and I recognise that under no circumstances can I drink, because I can't have one drink and put it down. So when I drink, that alcoholic obsession and craving develops in me, and I just can't stop. And when you're in a situation like that where it's just so, it's just, I don't know, it's awful. I would just drink to oblivion, basically, and just pass out. Yeah, wake up in hospitals a lot of the time.
And do you think the postnatal depression kind of helped drive you to that as well? That would have all been...
Yeah, I think there was a lot of factors. I didn't really understand alcoholism at that time. I didn't really... I think it's come out now that, there was some older relatives that, are down the line, that there has been drinking problems. But at the time I wasn't aware of any alcoholism in the family. So I didn't really understand why I was doing it. Like, I wouldn't want to drink, and I wouldn't want to drink that much, and I certainly wouldn't want to drink to black out. I just wanted to drink to calm down and not feel like the way I was feeling.
And you moved to the North Coast, did you say?
The mid-North Coast,
So then you're away from your family as well.
Yeah, another classic DV, that isolation. And then the threat started coming of, if you leave, I'll take the kids and you'll never see them again. And
so things started spiralling downwards around this time.
I felt really trapped.
Right.
I felt like I had no choice but to stay, very isolated.
So why do you think that was? What was it that you were you trapped, or is it a belief that you were trapped?
It's a belief, and it's a threat. I'm not a very big person, and my kid's father is a very large man, very intimidating. He would say things like, there was a gun buried on the property, and, I never knew where that gun was. And I guess I've had a lot of therapy, a lot of mental health intervention, a lot of supports in mine and my children's life. But it's taken years and years and years for some of those beliefs to start to change. And a lot of work, a lot of it comes down to science as well, and those neuro pathways that for years and years were driven down a certain path of believing that if I did leave, he would come and, take my kids and I'd never see them again. And he would make comments about other situations in the media where... One comment that was made I'll never forget was he understood why a father had killed himself and the 3 children when the mother left. And I just, no matter what happens in life, if my kids were taken or separated from me, I can't fathom an understanding of how that would mean I would want to kill them. So there was a lot daily that kept me...
Emotional manipulation. Yeah. So he'd moved you away from your family, and then you were suffering the alcoholism, and he was emotionally manipulating you with threats of don't leave or I'll do this. Is that right?
And bringing in all the services as well.
Right.
So there was that belief police and child safety that he was this amazing dad that was keeping the family together, and she's drunk, and I believed that too. I believed that that was kind of my lot in life at that time, and that's what I deserved because I was an alcoholic and I couldn't stop drinking, and all my life all I'd ever wanted to be was a mum, and you know, why can't you stop drinking for your children? And
So what was the turning point for you at this point?
initially, the first huge turning point for me was when a child safety worker had come to the house with a male. They always come in twos. And after listening for an hour about she'd be such a great mum, she's such a great mum when she's not drinking and everything, he took the male outside to show them the veggie garden. And the female child safety worker handed me a card and said, if you need to talk, here's my number. And I thought, oh my God, she knows.
So she saw through it.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And so you took that opportunity to call her?
It was difficult
Yeah.
because at this stage, he would pretty much arrange everything around being present around me all times because police were involved and there were several domestic violence orders placed on him. Well before DV, really, there wasn't a lot of physical abuse. There was, but it was mostly all the other abuse that has you thinking, I wish he would just punch me in the face so I could prove it. So there was already some flags, but I rang her when I had an opportunity and I went to the office to just divulge everything. And I was just really honest about my drinking and how bad it was, but really honest about everything else as well. And I think while we sat in the room, I had my phone on the table and he rang probably at least 30 times. And she kept saying to me, just put it away, Sharlene, I don't care. And I was terrified, like, no, I have to answer the phone. I have to explain where I am. But she was really a huge factor in getting us out of there. Eventually, it was quite a long.
So what was that
Here.
process?
People have a lot of misconceptions of child safety as, you know, oh, they come in and they want to remove children, and but they're not that at all. They actually, more than anything, want to keep families together.
Yeah.
And I came to see that. Like, I was terrified of child safety. I thought the same thing was going to happen to me, but they have, if you work with them and you're honest and you really want to make change, they have a lot of resources available to help make that change. They did start helping me. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite ready, I guess, or to stop drinking at that time, but not long after that, with the help of the police, there was a domestic violence order which removed him from the house. And I really struggled for a period of time with the kids on my own down in the mid-North Coast with no other outside support. Fortunately, my mum came down from the Sunshine Coast and helped me pack up the house. And I really am into signs and a lot of things like that. And I found this book that I hadn't looked at for ages, and I opened it up. It's a women's book of meditations, daily meditations, and I opened it up on the date, and I hadn't looked at it for years, and I found it, and the first line was, there's always like a little line. It said, I'm so grateful for my one son and 3 daughters. And I just thought, what are the chances? But I just got that little bit of hope then. I just thought, everything is so not okay right now, but I just know it's going to be. So
Yeah.
I came up to the Sunshine Coast and lived with mum and dad, and child safety wanted me to go back. My kids miss me and they wanted, you know, for me to share custody. And I just said, I can't. If I go back, I'll die. And I knew that. One way or another, it just wasn't a safe environment for me. And that's when I came up here and started my journey into sobriety. And
So did you go into any particular program?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
Yeah. Is that on the coast here?
Yeah, it's like worldwide 12-step program.
The Alcoholics Anonymous. Yeah.
And at this point, were your kids in the custody of the father?
They were living with him and his mother, but they had gone into the care of custodians of the state for a period of time. So child safety were really heavily involved.
Right.
And I came up here and I got sober and I started doing random drug and alcohol blood test.
Yeah.
For quite a period of time. Child safety paid for me to go down every 3 weeks and stay in a caravan park, really nice facilities, you know, a couple of bedrooms, and So I just went down and really enjoyed the 3 nights that I had with my kids. I had phone calls 3 times a week, and they came up for all the holidays in that time. And during that time, we just started to, well, we were in court. My solicitor said she was pretty disgusted with me, really, when I first met her. I thought she was quite scary. Court was in New South Wales, in Newcastle, and said for whatever reason you couldn't prioritise your children over your drinking, you're never going to get them back. And I took all that on board, but I also, an older sober member had said to me, Charlene, you can be a drunk mum or a dead mum, but you know, unless you get sober and change your life, you're just no good to those kids anyway. So I just knew intuitively that I had to continue my journey of sobriety and trust that everything else would work out.
How long have you been sober?
I've been sober for quite a few years now. I joined AA about 11 years ago now, I think, and then a few years into it, there was all the family court stuff and a lot of pressure, and there's no excuses, but I did have a lapse and ended up in hospital, and it really, really showed me, if there was any doubt, that you know, how easily you can go and pick up a drink.
Well, it's a very difficult journey to get sober, and it is possible, obviously, because you've done it. But what was the one motivating thought that kept you on that journey of sobriety? What is it that you were wanting at the other end of it?
In AA, they say you have to get sober for yourself. And I used to think, yes, I know I have to get sober for myself, but I have to get sober for my kids. You know, that was always my thought, and I just couldn't distinguish between the two. But when that very wise man made that comment to me, I really knew, okay, you know, the kids are obviously everything to me, but unless I get sober, I'm not going to get them back. There's just no chance. There wasn't really much of a chance anyway, according to my solicitor. So my motivation had to be sober, number one, regardless of any other outcomes. And
awesome.
Like I said before, everything else will fall into place. And it's amazing.
So at what stage did you get your children back?
Within a year.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So it was a stepping stone type process. My parents were asked if they would like to join proceedings, which is something that they had to think about. And thankfully, because I was in AA, Sharlene didn't have to determine the outcome for them. You know, that I knew that was a really big step to take, and I just had to let them discuss it and, weigh it up. And as much as I really, really wanted that to happen, and thankfully they agreed and joined proceedings, and they had to undergo quite a lot of, I guess, like, you know, almost like if you were going to be a foster carer, there's a lot to go through with child safety, and it's quite invasive of your privacy. And, you know, I'll be forever grateful that my parents put their hands up to do that. And then, Child Safety just rang up one day. We had a bit of an inkling. There was some things going on and things we'd been asked to find out with their dad, and it was just the same. He just went on and on about, you know, himself and my drinking, and they wanted to share that I'd been doing all the tests and everything, and I just said, no, that's my business, you know. I know that when we get to court, that's what the judge wants. They want records, you know. So I just kept doing everything I was told, really. You know, whatever my solicitor said, whatever Child Safety said. If they said to jump through 3 hoops, I'd jump through 6, and just kept doing that, one foot after the other.
It must have been quite a laborious process going to court and not having your children and seeing your children and not seeing your children. But you definitely seem to have had that determination, that end goal in mind, and sounds like with the help of your parents there as well, they were great support where you got to that eventually. So did your children live with your parents at all?
Yeah. Just for the first year. I think when they came up, we were in family court for 8 years.
Wow.
We had 3 final hearings.
So what impact do you think this has had on your kids and on you?
Huge impact on all of us. On my son, when he had started high school, so he was with me for a few years, and then he started to act out behaviour that was modelled in the home, punching holes in the walls, and just doing some things that weren't appropriate with 3 little girls in the house. And when I say not appropriate, just his aggression and his anger. And I tried to get help for him, and we did find a counsellor that he'd connected with, and unfortunately the counsellor stopped turning up, and a lot of our help came to the home, which was really helpful, and he lost trust. And I see now that was his journey, but it came to a point where I couldn't manage his behaviour, and I spoke with Child Safety about finding, somewhere for him, and he went to live with his father's mother. Unfortunately, a lot of that same behaviour was modelled, and so that was a process for him, but I knew I had to do that because I didn't want to be the mother that excused his behaviour, because I've seen how that works out. Fortunately, I'm really glad I made that decision. He'd been to a lot of AA meetings. I had to take my kids when I was getting sober when they were little, and he ended up making amends to me, apologised and said, Mum, I knew I was too much for you at that time. And so, I lost him for a little bit. He was quite angry that his mum had sent him away, but I knew I was doing it for the right reasons. And now he's an amazing young man. He was school captain. He's really into politics. He's very intelligent, very worldly. He studied law for a year and a half, and he was up in Brisbane studying, but now he's actually been accepted to the police force, and
Amazing.
he's just doing the online study before he goes off to the academy. So he really wants to make some really good changes in the world.
I think the important thing of a parent is that we don't always get it right.
No.
And we do make mistakes, but overcoming it and showing that we can put the work in to be a better person or to do better. I think overall, when you look overall at your parents like in that way, and I hope my son does that for me, that's a really good message, that life happens, things are hard, things are tough, but the resilience and the strength it takes to overcome them. I'm kind of going to gold, aren't I? The strength and resilience it takes to overcome them is a much stronger message. And hopefully can cancel out all the hard times or the difficult or bad decisions that we've made in our life.
I think a really important one as well is, as a parent, is to apologise when you've done something wrong. And I can sometimes think I'm well justified in losing my temper, or coming home from work and there's dishes in the sink and they're all on their phone, even silly things like that. But when I've really overreacted out of exhaustion or frustration or something that's going on for me, it's important to own it and apologise and really try to leave the but out of it as well. Well, I did this, but you know.
Yeah, I agree.
Having 3 teenage girls so close in age at home, and being a single parent, like I've been a single parent for a really long time, and so everything is down to me. All the finances, all the decisions, all the holidays, all the bills, and it's stressful. And I didn't work for a long time because of all the therapy in the court, and I've started working and I'm studying at university, and sort of a few things of what does Sharlene want to do with life. But I need to like let go of the reins, and say, look, I've really been there. And every family's different, and every family everyone does what they think is the best thing for their family. And I think for me, partly the choice was taken away because you can't really work a lot when you've got 4 kids, little ones, and you're in court and everything like that. But I've always really been there for the kids, and I'm always really good at making a little bit of money go a really long way, and just doing really fun things, and in holidays, I researched when they were little, where free or cheap things were on, and kind of you do that and then have a yearly pass to the fun parks. And
it's great you've been able to do that and do all those things. As a single mum, 4 kids, that's expensive. So to find those fun ways, and you've obviously been creative and resourceful in how to do that.
It's amazing. And you're going to university now. The kids are getting older now, so they can do more things for themselves. So how are you finding that fulfillment of achieving some of your own goals again?
Really challenging at my age. Since I was breastfeeding my son, it's really corny, and the program One Born Every Minute came on while I was breastfeeding, and I was full of those hormones, and I'm watching these midwives and everything in this British hospital, and I was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah, right.
And I've always kind of gone through life doing what I wanted to do. You know, I had the kids, I travelled the world, but I didn't really know in my heart what I wanted to do as a career, I guess. And so I started saying I wanted to be a midwife. I did enroll when the kids were like little and I was still with their dad, and they started school and daycare, and he said I couldn't do it because my job was looking after the kids. So I had to pull out, and then, you know, life took us on that other journey. And then finally I was talking to my AA sponsor actually, and I was talking about it, and she said, oh, for God's sake, Sharlene, I'm going to get off the phone. If you don't ring that university right now, I'm never talking to you again. I was like, oh.
You've been told.
Yeah. And so I did.
Yeah.
They told me the mark was ridiculously high and I wouldn't get in and I'd have to do all these other things. And I said, oh, what was the mark? And then I told them my mark. They were like, oh, yep, you'll get in.
Yeah,
So I was like, thank God I was a nerd in my teens because I studied really hard. And it's been really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I'm actually having a little break at the moment for 6 months because I took on university and I took on casual work. Life's getting expensive. And then the overachiever in me is trying to do everything. And I failed a couple of subjects. And it's not because I didn't have the passion or the drive or the commitment. It's purely because I just didn't have the time to do the best that I could.
Yeah.
But that's the dream, is it, to be a midwife?
Oh, I will be one day, yeah.
I love that you're never too old to have a new beginning.
Definitely not.
And that you're starting again, but you're starting it with passion, with focus, determination, and sober and clean. And I actually feel quite emotional because I've got some history, like in my family, and I understand the journey that it is to overcome some of these things, and many don't make it, but you have, and you sat here today as a testament to your hard work that you've put into that, and you've done it for yourself and you've done it for your kids, and I'm sure they're all standing behind you, cheering you on, really proud of you.
Yeah.
Well done.
Thanks.
It's an amazing achievement, and you know, keep going for those goals, keep going for that midwifery, because you're making steps all in the right direction, and you're going to make it. You're going to get there.
Are we going
So we're
to
going for gold.
We
Sorry, that
are.
was my gold.
That was beautiful gold, Ange.
I know, I'm crying now.
Yeah. Well, Sharlene, I see a really strong mother heart in you. And I feel like that's been the driving force of everything you've chosen through life. Not so much, not the drinking, but to get through that drinking section of your life, but you've always had this dream to be a mum, and you've replicated that from your mum, the way that she mothered you, and that has never let go, has it? You got to have these 4 beautiful children, even through your challenges. That was still the driving factor to overcome those challenges, and now as your children are getting older, you still have this desire to mother and help other mothers, and I think that's really beautiful. And I think the fact that you're a high achiever, you always did well at everything that you were doing, the fact that you had this reaction to alcohol, which really just took a course of its own, and then to have that will to come back and to pull that all back in so that you could be the best mum and the best Sharlene that you could be is just such a credit to you. And now having got to the place where you are, I know there's so many good choices ahead of you that's just going to keep you on the up and up from here on in. So good on you. It's an inspiration.
So thank you for being with us, Sharlene.
Thank you for having me.
It was great that you could share your story.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Gold Diggers podcast.
If you want to be a guest or you want to reach out, you can do so on our website, thegolddiggers.com.au.
We also share behind the scenes footage and giveaways across our socials on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
We dig for gold every Wednesday, so subscribe and follow now so that you don't miss a story that could change your life.
Honey, you're my sugar.